So you want to do an LS swap on your Gbody. I got you. Let's get right into it. Let me show y'all how to get a LS in your Gbody for little to no money. And let's get into it. God is everything. Without God, I'm nothing. All right, man. So the first piece to your puzzle is going to, first of all, be to do as much research as you can. I mean, everything you need to know is on the internet. Everything you need to know is on YouTube. But if you like me, you like to have a second opinion. You like to see what some other guys have dealt with, some things some other guys have went through, blah, blah, blah. So first things first, if I was doing an LS, and I would first of all clear out as much space as I can up under the engine bay. This doesn't cost you any money, it just costs you some time. I would clear out as much space as I was going to clear out. Like, let's say you decided you wasn't going to use the AC box or the heater or none of that. You weren't going to use none of that stuff. Maybe you was going to go vintage air, or maybe you just wasn't going to use it completely. I will go ahead and remove that. Let's say you planned on painting the engine bay anyway. You just say, okay, I'm going to paint the engine bay anyway. I would literally clear out as much as I can and sit the engine in, you know, etc., etc. Motor mounts, which is gonna bring me to your first piece you're gonna need. Now, I'm not providing a parts list or anything for this. Not this time, at least. I may do one later if y'all need it. But most of the stuff you need is gonna be out there. But I figured I would give y'all a quick rundown. But so I went with standard, regular old, the small block Chevy motor mounts. But it's the brackets that go on side of the LS engine is what determine if they fit or not. Now, I didn't buy these, but they both on the side of the block, and I think you can move them back and forth, right? But these I have, you have to lift the engine up, unbolt them, slide them, and bolt them back up, drop it back down, and retest it. But from what I understand, there are some that you just loosen the bolts up on them and slide them like that. You don't have to, you know, lift the whole engine up. They stay bolted to the motor mount, and you just slide the engine back and forth and just tighten it up. If I do another LS swap, those will be what I'll be running. And for most of your small block Chevys, or I keep saying small block Chevy, but for most of your older Chevys, it's going to be pretty much the same. The motor mounts are pretty much going to be really similar. You know, there may be a few differences, but like I said, most of the time it's going to be, you know, pretty straightforward as far as the motor mounts go. Now, here we go. On some of your Chevys, you can save money on headers by keeping your standard, by keeping the standard headers that come on these LS, or, you know, the truck LS. A lot of them will fit, from what I'm understanding. Some of them will fit in some other things. I know a Gbody is one of them. I think they say they won't fit. I think the Camaro headers are fitted on the Gbodys, I think. That's just how much research I didn't do, just to be honest with you. The headers I went with are Hetman headers, and they're mid-length headers. So they go down about halfway, and then you just hook up to them, and they bolt back down. I haven't had any exhaust work done yet. I just got some, you know, 90-degree headers that bolt down. I got some knockoff Amazon mufflers bolted to this thing, and that's about it as far as that goes. So we starting down and we're working our way up. Don't let me forget your oil pan. Your oil pan isn't a must. Technically speaking, it's not something you must do. It's just gonna hang a bit lower. So I opted to get a muscle car oil pan, because if you buy an oil pan, you might as well do your gaskets. So that muscle car oil pan is something I also recommend. All right, guys, next thing up, I have your upper and lower radiator hoses. The upper radiator hose, and I'm gonna get in here and show y'all some of this stuff. I probably need to be showing y'all this. But give me a second, let me go over at least this part, and then I'll grab the camera and I'll show y'all. The upper radiator hose is the standard truck hose. The lower is kind of, I guess you would say, like a flexible hose, but there is one that they said will fit. So, I don't know. All of the pulleys and everything, they fit fine with the exception of the power steering pulley. On the Gbody, that power steering pulley will be within centimeters of that steering box. Some people just notch the steering box. I chose to buy the smaller pulley. I can't remember what it comes off of. It's been so long ago. I can't remember what that pulley comes off of, but it's a smaller pulley that you just press it on and it gives you the clearance that you need. I think it's like a Camaro power steering pulley or something. I don't know. Now that you got the motor bolted in, you got your headers, you got basically the engine in, you got your hoses. The only other thing that you would need is a harness, and that harness is, back when I bought that harness, it was $1,000. That's for the computer and everything. And this is just bare minimum, just getting it running. These Gbodies come with a 200 4R, I think it's called, or 200 R4 or something. I've seen guys bolt those right up to the LSs and, you know, be good with them. Most guys opt for a 4L60 or 4L80. Completely up to you. I went with a 4L80, specifically a built 4L80. And you can use just the stock torque converter if you want. I went with a cam, and my cam required me to run a 2800 to 3200 stall. I went with a 3200 stall. These are not things that you have to go with. So my bill cost me a bit more money. Yours doesn't have to. Let's see what else we got. Other than that, man, other than getting fuel to the engine, fuel lines. Me personally, I opted to take out all my old fuel line. There may be a way to modify your fuel line to get up to the fuel rail, to get up there to it. Because, you know, all you gotta do is get fuel line up to it, and you gotta have a return. For me, my El Camino had the old tanks on them that didn't have it wasn't a fuel injection tank. Let me say that. It just wasn't a fuel injection tank. So I had to get a fuel injection tank, and you know, all the factory stuff, nothing special. I didn't go with anything, you know, LS swap tank or nothing. It was just a newer Gbody tank. Put that tank on, and everything has ran fine. I put an aeromotive fuel pump in it. I don't know how small or how big of a fuel pump you can go, but for these 5.3s, you know, I went with an aeromotive. A lot of people go with the aeromotive. I think it's a 340, which is overkill most of the time. It's overkill. But yeah, other than that, you have to figure out how to get your throttle working. I went with a adjustable throttle cable up here. Don't look the best, but it works. What else we got, man? What else do we have on this thing? Guys, I honestly think that's about it to LS swap your Gbody. Okay, here's something else. If you change transmissions, you probably are going to have to get your drive shaft modified. I had to have my drive shaft shortened, I think. Yeah, I had to have my drive shaft shortened a few inches because I went with a 4L80, and they're a lot longer than that little 200 that came out of there. So I went a 4L80. I had to have my drive shaft shortened, and I had to get a 4L80, you know, the thing that goes up in the transmission. I can't think of the name of it right now, but I had to get that for a 4L80. It bolted right on. Nothing crazy. Nothing real hard went into this project. So let's talk about this. If you have a column shift, you can get that column shift to work, but it's gonna come with a lot of small adjustments. Mine worked to an extent. It worked. I could get in literally every gear. I think maybe like the first low gear, number 1, I couldn't get into it. But everything else I had, drive, reverse, neutral. But yeah, I couldn't get into that last one with my shifter. Now, probably with a little bit of adjustment, you know, and it would be a lot easier if you got a second man. If you got 2 men, it will be a lot easier because you can have him just smooth it and you can just see what you're working with from the bottom and make your adjustment, tell him try it again, blah, blah, blah. So with a 2-man, that's gonna be a whole lot easier task to be done. Now, if your El Camino came like mine, you had a bench seat and you had, you didn't have a console in the middle or nothing like that to run a floor shifter. Now, if you really want to, you can probably put a floor shifter in with a bench seat. I opted to go with the bucket seats and I weld the brackets in for the bucket seats and weld the brackets in for a floor shifter. Matter of fact, let me show y'all some of this stuff so I can kind of clear up, you know, any discrepancies we got. So I'm gonna start just like same order. I'm gonna try to show y'all everything, how simple this was. All right, guys, so here's what we got. In simple, I'm doing a lot of rewiring, so you're gonna see a lot of wiring. This is like the horn and the headlights for this side. So I rewired this whole car because it sat for a long time. Anyway, this is a trans cooler. I'm not gonna run that one. I'm gonna run one with a fan on it, but that ain't got nothing to do with what we talking about. All right, so here we go. There are the motor mounts down there. As y'all can see, they just bolt, and then the motor mount inside there, that's just a regular small block Chevy or, you know, regular El Camino motor mount, which is basically for most of your small block Chevys. Don't know if I can get y'all in there for a better shot, but if you can see, it just bolts to the, you know, to the block, and as you can see, you can adjust them. Let's see. All right, so this oil pan, it hangs down but not super low. As you can see, right there is the bottom of that oil pan. If you had the other one, it would be way down here. Give y'all another shot of the motor mounts. Nothing had to be notched, nothing crazy had to be done. All right, that was the oil pan. What else did I say? Fuel rail, I went with just some aluminum line that I just bent and just curved it all the way up and just bent it up, and the one down below is the return. It's also just aluminum line. Nothing crazy. Now over here we get a little tight. I ain't gonna lie to y'all, we get a little tight. I could probably benefit a little bit to slide this engine up a little bit, just because you can see how tight that is. The only spark plug that I can't get to is that very back one. So here's what I did. I cut a hole right there. I cut a hole right there. Go right through to it. Change that spark plug. I do, for that reason, plan on deleting this and going to vintage air at some point. So that's just something to be said. Like I said, the radiator hose, this is just a standard, you know, hose. This little red line that you see does need to be hooked up. You can tap the water pump, or some guys run like a little thing in between here, cut the hose and put something in there. I don't know nothing about that, but yeah, you do have to have that vent to get the air out of it, keep the air out of there. Otherwise, you know, you're gonna be overheating. Factory intake, I'm pretty sure this would clear the hood. And I think that's something a lot of guys had issues with, was clearing the hood with some of the motor mounts. So, like I said, do your research before you start. But yeah, there go the headers. I had them coated, but they starting to rust. Man, I don't like I said, it's so simple, I don't even know what else. Like, you know, if you wanted to, let's just say hypothetically, one of y'all wanted to run a turbo. If if you want to run the turbo, those headers would be faced this way. Now I don't know if they would clear that box. You might have to, you know, delete your AC to run turbo. But if you can get those headers to clear, boom. Turbo, want to go twin turbo, same deal. You might have an issue with your steering thing right here. So, like I said, steering linkage is adjustable. Let's see, maybe I can show y'all the wiring harness. Like I said, this is, LS swaps are not hard. Like I said, I opted for bucket seats because I could never get that steering column to catch all the gears, and I kind of wanted that first gear. I kind of wanted it just in case I wanted to leave and you know. So I went with a floor shifter. Very simple. Show y'all how hard this was. Wasn't hard at all. Took the standard brackets, welded them in place, welded all the brackets in place, welded those brackets in, and we have a, you know, bucket seat conversion. Nothing crazy. Here is the computer. I got an OBD2, everything. This comes from PSI conversion. There's the information right there. PSI conversions. PSI conversions. LS swap went perfectly. Still got some wiring I gotta clean up in here, but like I said, for the most part, man, that's it. Here's the thing, a lot of guys complain about LS swaps being hard or complain about them being, you know, all that. They have issues with them. A lot of stuff comes from a lack of knowledge. A lot of it comes from a lack of knowledge, if you want me to be honest with you. A lot of it comes from trying to cheap out on something. I've seen guys say, oh man, I didn't spend $1,000 on harness. I did my own harness, or I bought a cheap harness off eBay for $200. I've had a lot of guys come back and say a lot of their issues derive from trying to cheap out on the LS. The most expensive thing I spent the most money on was the harness, which was it's probably more than that now. It's been years ago. It's probably every bit of $1,500 now for the harness. To me, it was worth it because I had absolutely no issues with starting up. The only time I had the issue was I did the cam swap and the computer did not like that cam. It would start and shut off, start, shut off, start, shut off, start, shut off. And that part was a headache. I bought a tune from a guy. It was just an email tune just to get it started. $200, tune, the car runs. But anyway, guys, I appreciate y'all for tuning in to another one, man. I just figured I would do a quick rundown on how cheap you can do an LS swap in a Gbody. Hit that subscribe button, like button, and share the video with somebody, man. You might got a buddy that said, man, I want to do an LS swap, but I don't know how much it's gonna cost. Go ahead, share it with him.